The second volume of Tales from the Pizzaplex titled HAPPS came out about 5 days ago now, and yesterday I released my summary of the first story in the book, titled Help Wanted, and I really enjoyed it. But today we're going to be doing a summary on the second story in the book, also the title story, called HAPPS. So let's not waste any more time, and let's just get started. The main character of HAPPS is Aiden, a tall 15-year-old kid with bushy hair and unattractive facial features. He had been relatively new to his school, and people in the school basically universally called him Adon instead of Aiden. People had done this since he tried out for a talent show at his school. Since Aiden wasn't very attractive, apparently, he tried appealing to people with his unusual skill in terms of his knowledge, as well as stuff like juggling, jump rope, hula hoops, and yo-yos, and stuff like that. During the auditions, the clueless teacher announcing him to be next had pronounced his name Adon, because I guess she's stupid. During the actual audition, though, Aiden completely messed up, falling off the stage. So the story actually begins at Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex, always a good place to start considering this is a Pizzaplex dedicated book series, and yet this is only the second of 6 stories so far that actually take place at the Pizzaplex. It begins with him opening a door aggressively to get out into the main area of the Pizzaplex, accidentally pushing the door so hard that the recoil caused it to hit him again in the back, causing seniors from his school who were nearby to turn and laugh at him. One of them, a redhead named Nora, pointed out and made fun of his black eye. Aiden's best friend, and also his only friend, Jace, who he was at the Pizzaplex with, had tried to reassure him that it made him look cooler. He'd just gotten it during their game of laser tag when a guy named Landon had quote-unquote accidentally elbowed him in the face. Aiden was pretty pissed off, tired of everyone pushing him around or being assholes to him, and even his parents did that. He wanted to have control for once. So, walking through the Pizzaplex without paying any attention to what he was doing, fueled by rage, Jace tried to stop Aiden, who yelled, "What?" to his friend's face. Jace was small for a ninth grader, and he had kind of a little kid-sounding voice, and when he was afraid, he basically crumbled. Aiden ended up apologizing, though, and all was well. Aiden and Jace had basically done everything they wanted to for today, so Aiden kind of just wanted to go home until Jace suggested the Freddy's Fortress, since it had been fun when they'd scared little kids last time they went there. Freddy's Fortress was a tube maze with a bunch of climbing and sliding pipes entwined with the Fast Freddy roller coaster. There was also a security bot named HAPPS, aka the Helpful Automated Pipe Protection Server, that roamed the tube maze to ensure everything was safe and to help injured, fallen, or lost kids. Jace also suggested that HAPPS wouldn't let Aiden get injured in the tube maze, so we didn't have to worry about another black eye. Aiden and Jace thought HAPPS looked pretty hilarious and thought it would be funny if they had their own HAPPS to clear the way for them at school and do stuff like that for them. Something interesting to note, though, is that the Pizzaplex in this story is described differently to how it is in Security Breach itself, with Fazbear and seemingly Roxy Raceway, or at least bumper cars which in the game are at Roxy Raceway, not being next to each other, and the basic descriptions being different. This is kinda weird considering these stories all take place in the game universe, so what's exactly going on here? Well, I think the most likely option is that it's because Tales from the Pizzaplex has been found to have began progress in 2019 when the Pizzaplex looked very different. The original teaser for Security Breach shows the Pizzaplex looking very different to how it does now, and in Daco's Steelwool interview they said that the map of the Pizzaplex changed severely over time during development, which is likely part of the reason that it was delayed so many times. So that's one idea. The second idea is that the Pizzaplex was shown in Security Breach to have been open for at least 5 years, so it's very likely that the Pizzaplex attractions just changed over time. I personally think it's both, or that the first option is correct from a real-life standpoint, but the second option is the explanation for the real-life problem from a lore standpoint. So Jace and Aiden go to Freddy's Fortress, and we get a lot of details about it, but none of it is really important for a summary, so yeah. We also get some background information about HAPPS and how he was basically the solution to a problem of the unsanitariness of the tube maze and other similar attractions at other pizza establishments. At a certain point through their journey through the maze, Jace and Aiden are faced with a choice between 4 different directions they could go in. None of the options contained a slide, but one did contain 3 little kids, and Aiden had the idea of trying to scare those little kids. So they did. There were 2 boys and a girl. One boy had curly brown hair, the other had a round face and dark skin, and the girl had blonde hair and blue eyes. They seemed to be about 5 to 6 years old, yet even at that age, the girl was really bossy and annoying as hell. So Jace and Aiden get close to the kids and then start to maniacally scream and lunge at the kids, causing all three to scream, one even running away, but the girl quickly realized what was going on. She called Jace and Aiden stupid about 567,324 times, and then told them to leave and not come back. Although they kind of just thought the girl was annoying, they did kind of feel bad for taking pleasure in scaring kids. Aiden was kind of ashamed of himself, and Jace seemed to feel the same, so they just left. Not because they were afraid when this 5-year-old threatened to punch them, but because they were ashamed of themselves. So they decide to just find a slide to get out of here. On their way, they find Haps, who asks them if they are lost, and they tell him that they're fine. I should mention now that the cover also makes Haps out to be massive, when in reality he's less than 3 feet tall. So Haps also has doors on his torso, and when one opens, a third arm comes out of it with a sponge and disinfectant spray. It kind of reminds me of the lobster claw on Baby's chest, but that's probably just a meaningless detail. Interestingly, as Haps moves away from them, Jace and Aiden notice a mechanism where a mirror blocks the opening of a tube that seemed to have been a problem, like had something wrong with it. Aiden thought it could be that Haps actually blocked off the parts of the maze that required maintenance, like emergency doors for ships and submarines if they start to take on water. Aiden suggested trying to find Haps again and trying to see if he leads them somewhere interesting. So then there's more stuff about directions they take to get through the maze, and none of it is really important at all until they somehow go in a complete circle. At a certain point they landed in a glow-in-the-dark ball pit, and then somehow made it back there like 15 minutes later. So then they went through a dark tube they expected to lead into another area, but found that it was actually a dead end. This confused them because they had never actually found a dead end before, so they wondered why it was blocked off. But then Aiden tried to dent the plastic and pull it back to see what was in that section of the maze. He tried, but it didn't work. He tried kicking it, but it didn't work. He tried prying it with Jace's Swiss Army knife, but it didn't work. So he reverted back to kicking it, but this time with both feet and over again to try to weaken it and make it easier to open. Just then, Haps showed up, asking Jace and Aiden if they were lost. The two insisted they were fine, but then Haps told them that they were lost and that he would lead them to the exit of Freddy's fortress. They kept insisting that they weren't lost and then apologized for what they were doing, but Haps kept saying that they were lost and he would help them out of the tube maze. He said it again and again until Aiden had enough and kicked Haps away with all his might. Then Jace joined in as both of them kicked the crap out of Haps, kicking him against the side of the pipe over and over until the pipe came loose and they all fell into the darkness. When Aiden came to, he looked around and realized that he could see some of his surroundings. It was dark, but his eyes had adjusted now, so he could see that they had been in the very area they were trying to get into. Aiden and Jace then realized that they couldn't see Haps around. Looking back up to where they'd fallen, they saw a blockade cover the space they'd fallen through, like what happened with the mirror before, only this thing was transparent. It seemed like these partition things were two-way mirrors, where they looked like mirrors on the outside, but they were like see-through glass on the other. Jace and Aiden still seemed to be in the pipe, but where it fell seemed to have broken off. They seemed to still be in with other tubes and stuff, but in complete darkness and with no one around there to help them. But the main part of the maze had still been visible above them. So with the whole area to themselves, Aiden and Jace thought they might as well explore. They were also able to see some kids up in the main part of the maze, but the kids couldn't see them because of the two-way mirrors. Aiden liked being invisible to everyone else in the Pizzaplex because it gave him some freedom. So Aiden and Jace explored for a while until they realized that they'd been in the tube maze for a total of 2 hours and they'd been really hungry and thirsty. They each ate half a chocolate bar and then Aiden had a horrifying thought. Was there actually any way out of here? He asked Jace, who said that he expected the slide to be the way out, which obviously proved to be wrong, so they decided to just look around the entire maze for a way out. After a while of searching, Jace asked if they were trapped and Aiden thought for a second, telling him that he thinks they are. Jace started to cry and Aiden was about to open his mouth to tell him that it was okay to cry in this situation because he wanted to cry too. But before he could speak, they suddenly heard a muffled scratching sound. They stopped to listen and at first they heard nothing, but then there was a distant scraping sound that was followed by a faint crackle of static. They listened for a bit until they ignored it because they're stupid and went back to thinking about a way to get out of there. Seriously, have they never seen a horror movie? Since they were trapped, even bad ideas were better than none, so when Jace suggested trying to open up the partition they were trying to open before falling, but from the opposite side, which they were now at, Aiden was cool with at least trying it. So they went to that partition, and Jace tried to open it with his Swiss Army knife from a seam Aiden made earlier, but it wasn't working. But Aiden actually noticed some fractures in the partition, so he thought maybe he could kick it open. So the two started kicking it, and they actually managed to break it open. They tried to work together to move it out of the way so that they can get through, until they noticed that there was another two-way mirror partition in the way, blocking them from getting out. And there was no way to get this one out either. They sat down in defeat, and Aiden started to reassure Jace that it had been a good thought. But then they started hearing a whirring sound that was starting to grow closer to them. It was Haps. Aiden thought that because Haps was made to help kids who were lost, that he could help them get out of here. But when Jace saw Haps, he told Aiden that they had to get out of here. Aiden looked around a corner and saw Haps, but he didn't look quite as friendly anymore. He was damaged. When Haps saw Jace and Aiden, he spoke, but his programming was damaged and only part of what he said usually still came through. All he said now was, "Lost. Out. With me." Haps's foam hands had been gone, no longer on his arms, and the metal shards that had been underneath remained, sharp and able to kill. The two crawled as fast as they could for minutes, and Aiden was understandably terrified at the speed of Haps and the idea that his metal shards could kill him if he was too close. Haps was slower than he usually was because of the treads hanging off him, causing him to continuously lurch sideways, but just because he was slower doesn't mean he was slow. He was keeping up with Aiden and nearly stabbed him a few times. At a certain point, they made it to a ladder, and Haps would be slower on the ladder, so Aiden crawled up on his knees to get a better vantage point to get onto the ladder. They made it to and crawled up the ladder as fast as possible, and by the time they were at the top, Haps was still at the bottom. He usually used his foam hands to climb up the ladders, but since those were gone, he couldn't climb. But then, he shot out his third limb from the middle of his torso and tried climbing with that, which also didn't work to grip the ladder as it was also damaged. But it was also deadly enough to be a weapon just like his hands, or lack thereof. But luckily for now, Haps had no way of getting up. But the problem was that because of his shard arms, well, he kept destroying the area. And remember earlier, it's revealed that the partitions slide into place when there's damage, when the areas need maintenance. So that's what happened. Jace and Aiden started strategizing until one of the two-way mirrored panels slid into place above Haps, obstructing him from view. The two didn't know whether this was a good thing or a bad thing. They looked through the transparent pipes and saw people in other attractions and started banging on the pipes and screaming for help. But after a few minutes, their voices were getting hoarse, and Aiden accepted that no one can hear them because of the sound muffling here and the noise up there. Aiden and Jace noticed that some of the tubes had looked different since the last time they'd seen them. That meant that Haps had been nearby and damaged stuff, causing areas to get shut off. Not wanting to get boxed in, Jace and Aiden strategized on where they should go, chose a way out, and went. Then we cut to a really random scene from the perspective of Nora, the girl from the beginning of the story at the bumper cars. Some dude named Wyatt had slammed into her so hard that her head and teeth rattled and stuff, but he didn't really care. Wyatt, I mean. So she wanted to get revenge and hit him back. But she was caught up in the sight of a darker plastic tube area that extended down into darkness, and she wondered what had been going on down there. Suddenly, she heard a scream and looked up to see Wyatt and his friends ganging up on little kids, and she aimed her bumper car right at Wyatt, forgetting about the tubes and going straight for Wyatt. Then it cuts back to Jace and Aiden, who found a four-way junction with one path leading to a climbing pipe to escape from Haps when he came. After sitting in silence for a few minutes, Jace said that he feels bad for kicking Haps, and Aiden concurred. Then Jace asked if Aiden thought it was possible that Haps was trying to get revenge on them. But Aiden seems to think that that's absurd, despite the fact that the Glamrock animatronics in this very Pizzaplex have personality chips. I don't really understand why he thinks animatronics having feelings is so absurd, but whatever. Then they heard Haps on his way. The two crawled as fast as they could through the climbing pipe, but Haps was actually making his way up. Still slow, but he was having better luck with the climbing pipe than he had with the ladder. But Aiden and Jace found that at the top of the climbing pipe was just a dead end, and they had to turn back. Haps was causing damage to the pipes, causing one exit to get blocked off, while Haps himself blocked the other. Aiden thought he had a better chance at beating Haps than Jace did, so he jumped in front of him, until Jace leaped around Aiden with his Swiss Army knife, stabbing Haps in the torso. They both knew it wouldn't do much damage to the mechanism, but Haps was very lightweight, so Jace could probably keep him down so long as he avoided getting stabbed. Jace moved back and Haps swiped at him, but then Aiden kicked him up against the wall. Jace joined in and they both kept kicking him like they did before, but Haps was still able to take swipes at them, one even slicing Aiden's cheek. Jace told Aiden to go as Haps was able to get back on his treads. Both the boys crawled away as fast as they could, Haps right on their tail, but they managed to find a slide and went down it. They ended up in a ball pit and immediately rushed to get out, but Haps had come down the slide just as fast, if not faster than them, and had been launched further from the slide than they had. Jace was behind Aiden, so Haps went for him first. Jace could tell Haps was behind him, so he dove under the ball pit, accidentally putting his feet in the air though, and Haps took this opportunity to slice straight through Jace's ankle, cutting his foot off completely. Aiden immediately grabbed at Jace and tried to pull him towards him, but Haps had been doing the same thing. Jace's body shot back out from the pit when his foot came off, and Haps now took this opportunity to slice through Jace's shoulder. Aiden didn't know if it was too late to save his friend, but he had to try, so he hauled himself and Jace into a nearby pipe, but Haps was still trying to grab at Jace. Obviously without his hands he couldn't grab him, and instead just sliced him. Aiden couldn't really see that Haps was succeeding, but he could tell by the elevated volume of Jace's screams and the pain represented by the look on his face. He kept trying to retreat farther into the pipe, trying to keep Jace out of Haps' swiping range, but he wasn't able to. As Haps swiped, Jace screamed louder, and blood started pouring from his mouth, and then his body stiffened and then went limp. Aiden kept staring at Jace's now dead body until he saw Haps was too close to him, leaving him with no choice but to let go of his friend and crawl to escape the monster that was Haps. We get a while of Aiden just trying to escape Haps, doing twists and turns in the pipes, going up ladders, wondering about Haps and whether he had malicious intent or was just doing his job without realizing he was killing people, continuing his escape attempt, stuff like that. He kept trying to get away, and he made it to an area he recognized where he could escape from, but when he finally made it there, his heart sank as he realized it had now been closed off because of Haps damaging it. He was trapped, and Haps was nearby. There was no way out. All he could do was keep going, but there had been safety panels up in every single way out of this circle. He was in a circle. Whoops. Hit my mic, sorry. No, I hit my desk, actually. I'm lying to you. Anyway, he was caught in a loop. As he kept crawling, he thought about how long it would take for safety panels to appear, making it impossible for Aiden to keep going in the loop and just get cornered and killed. As he kept crawling, he looked up and through the transparent pipes, and he saw all the people who had been having fun and knew that none of them could see him. He was now invisible to everyone, just as he had wanted, and that is where the story ends. I'm not gonna lie, I don't think this story was all that good. I mean, the parts that were good were really good, but the parts that weren't good were really boring. I think the main reason why is that the entire story can be summarized by lonely kid and his only friend be sad that people don't like them, so they go into a tube maze and get frustrated by the cleaner/helper bot and kick him until they fall into a sectioned off area, only to find they are trapped, the robot is here and wants to kill them, and succeeds. The end. Basically that's it. The story concept is short as hell, but it's the longest story in the book, clocking in at 76 pages. I think the problem is that it takes place in a tube maze, and the directions these characters take isn't important, but it keeps getting explained. It just gets really repetitive because they are running from Haps for literally half the story, and the same stuff happens over and over again, and none of it is really important. And that also makes it hard to do a summary. In concept is cool, but it gets really repetitive and it just drags on for way too long. I mean, guys, this is the longest story in the book, but it's shorter than my summary for the shortest story in the book. You know, it's because I had to, like, just skip over a bunch of stuff because they're just crawling through pipes. Why do I need to talk about that? I don't. It's not important. And it just gets really repetitive and it just drags on for way too long. Usually this is also where I talk about lore that I find in the story, but honestly I didn't really notice anything. All I could think of is that Haps has a split face on the cover, which made me think it could be a daycare attendant thing, and the tube maze and running from Haps kind of reminded me of the moon section of Security Breach, but really vaguely, and that's really all. There's not really any lore to talk about, unlike for Help Wanted. But anyways, guys, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to. Next summary will be for the final full story titled B7, so stay tuned for that summary, hopefully coming out soon. Maybe tomorrow if I can finish reading it in time, and after that will be the summary for the epilogue. So I hope you all enjoyed, stay tuned, and I'll see you all later. Bye, guys.